Carrie Berk, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you here. And I promised when I told my husband I was interviewing you, I showed him your book and everything. And he said, do not spend the whole time talking about how old you are in comparison to her. So I'm going to try really hard not to do.
Oh,
But I started with the bucket hat, which you're wearing. If you're watching this on YouTube, you could be able to see it. I might have to share a picture because you look so cute.
thank you.
But I love the branded swag for your book. So congratulations on my real life rom-com, which just came out.
Thank you. It's all been really exciting. I've been wearing this bucket hat around. My phone case is like the book cover.
I
So I'm
love
kind of
it.
like branded all over the place this month.
As I would expect an influencer with 3.8 million TikTok followers or however many you have to be. You're like on brand, right? Which is amazing. So I did a lot of reading about you. And for someone who is 20, your resume is incredibly full. You have been an author before, writing books with your mom, a blogger, an influencer, an activist, which I definitely want to talk about some of your work around bullying, and an actor as well. So I kind of want to start by asking you, like, is there one of those roles that you feel most connected to, or do you feel like it is your life to be all of those things at once?
So I feel like I've tried a lot of different things growing up and I've learned what I like, what I don't like, just kind of exploring whatever I'm passionate about at a particular point in my life. I think I've always just returned to writing. Writing feels like home to me. My ultimate end game is to be a journalist. So I think that's definitely the one I'm most connected to. I love memoir writing, like I just did with my real life rom com, but ultimately end game for me would be a journalist for a magazine or newspaper. That's what I'm studying in college right now. So I always return to there. There's no more acting. There's no more vlogging. I feel like
Okay.
those are parts of growing up. But right now, like I'm really kind of on that path to being a journalist.
I think that's amazing. And so you grew up, your mom was a writer, you grew up writing, you did writing with her. And I'm interested because I always think it's fascinating when kids decide to pursue a similar line of work as their parents and not like what I did, which was do the complete opposite thing. What was it like working with your mom? And also, how has it been working on this book on your own?
Oh, it was great. I feel like I grew up watching her passion for writing really take flight every single day. I would watch her type away at her computer as I was like sitting on the couch, just really inspired by her. And that's why we did children's books together for so long. I feel like we shared that passion. I learned about writing in school and I fell in love with it myself. I think now, as a 20-year-old, I'm really trying to come into my own as a writer. I'm really grateful for her mentorship, but I think right now I'm finding my own voice as a writer through college, through writing this book. So I know she's always in my corner if I need her there for advice, but I feel like this type of writing, this type of journalism is unique to me. And that's something really special because I feel like for so long I've just tried to step out of her shadow. And now I'm really kind of making a name for myself in this industry.
I love it. And I think your voice really shines through in your writing, which is just
Thank
fabulous.
you.
So I want to talk about the book and your writing and your process. But first, I have to ask you about TikTok, which is a platform that I am not on and you are very popular on. My brother works for TikTok, so he's constantly trying to get me to go on TikTok.
Uh-huh.
But I would like to know, imagine you are trying to convince a seasoned middle-aged woman like myself about the merits of the platform. What would you say to someone like me who's terrified of TikTok?
It's a community. I mean, unlike other platforms where you see, things are kind of filtered or very like put together, TikTok is really like a playground. You can play around, you can post any video you really want in any niche, anything has the potential to go viral. So I think that's what makes TikTok really special. You just can play around whatever you want. It tends to be a really positive platform as well. I've experienced bullying on there before, but
Yeah.
I think in general, like TikTok has comment filters set in place that really are in support of their creators to try and block out the bad comments. It's this global community. Everyone can add to a trending hashtag and jump on each other. It's just a really special platform. And it also gives you an opportunity to build a business for people like me who I was never like a social media person. I liked posting on Instagram, but I was never an influencer. when I started posting on TikTok, I realized that it could become a business or a side hustle. And when my parents weren't monetizing during the pandemic, like I was, their 18-year-old daughter. So it was kind of crazy to see how that
That's
worked
so cool. All right. I'm coming around. I'm coming around. That was a very good argument.
Thank you.
So you're kind of growing up creating this content about your life, like basically in front of a camera. And I am really interested with what you said about the kind of unfiltered nature of TikTok. And so, you know, I feel like I would have been terrified to share that with people when I was 20 or 19, because I was a hot mess back then and occasionally now. But when how do you feel looking back at, now you've had this kind of documentation of a lot of your coming of age and growing up. How do you feel when you look back now at things you might have said or thought or done when you were younger?
I'm very grateful that I grew up in the age of social media because it's really a highlight reel. It preserves my memories. So I enjoy looking back on it. I think at the same time, I'm also a normal 20-year-old girl and I keep some stuff in my life private.
Hmm.
And it's important to set those boundaries. I think when I was first blowing up on TikTok, I was unfamiliar and I didn't know how to set boundaries. I thought every single thing in my life just had to be documented online for other people to see because I thought, I have this platform, I have a responsibility to be a role model for people, to be someone that other people look up to. But I've slowly learned that at the same time, I have to take care of myself and I have to keep these boundaries in place. So if there's a day where I'm not feeling social media now, I just don't do it and I don't think too much about it. So it's a learning curve, I think.
Yeah.
Overall,
How long have you been on TikTok for, kind of producing content?
since the pandemic, so
Okay.
2020.
So and that's right, you graduated during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that must have sucked. I'm so sorry that happened.
It's
Were there
okay.
positive things about that at all? Mm.
Yeah, I wrote my book.
So
That
your book
was
was a pandemic project for you.
yes, my book started off during the pandemic, kind of carried on into the year after, but I was feeling so unproductive and sad and anxious during the pandemic. I turned to writing to help pick me up. And it
Mm.
reminded me that when the pandemic ended, I would have this thing that's, a symbol of how far I'd come with my anxiety, with everything going on in the world. I used it and I used it as fuel to better myself, to turn pain into passion. And
Amazing.
that's what happened. So
Oh, look how cute it is. It's so freaking cute. The cover is like the cutest thing I've ever seen. I also want it as my phone case. I might do that too.
oh my God.
So, okay, let's get into the book. So tell everybody a little bit about My Real Life Rom-Com and what it's about.
Yeah, so this is my real life rom-com. The
I mean,
cover
look
was
at that.
shot by
We're going to put that picture on the post as well because it's just adorable.
oh, the cover was shot by the amazing Nigel Barker. He did such a good job on this cover.
America's Next Top Model legend. I did see that in an article. I was like, kind of amazing.
Best. So yeah, my real life rom-com really came about pretty naturally during the pandemic. I was worried about losing all of my memories, especially those related to love and dating and the lessons that I learned from that. So I just decided one day to start writing everything down, everything that I remembered. It was for myself and potentially as a personal essay to get published in like a 17 or a Cosmo. And I sent it to a friend one day and she told me that this had the potential to be something so much greater. I was using it at first as a form of self therapy to find closure with all these different guys and experiences from the past. But I soon realized that there really are no dating guides out there written by a teenager for teenagers. They're all written by experts or older women, which is great. But at the same time, teenagers need someone to level with and relate to. So I saw this void that I wanted to fill. I realized that all of these dating guides out there are telling people how they should date, who they should date, what you should do for your first kiss, what you should do for your first heartbreak. What I wanted to do is publish this book. Each chapter is dedicated to a different guy, a different dating experience, kind of like Sex and the City episodes.
Love it.
And have people read my experiences and take what they will from them. Best teacher's experience. It's not dictating people what they should do. So I help people learn through experience and at the same time sprinkle in little pieces of advice along the way.
Have you always been like a journaler? Because you have written a lot and, you wrote children's books, but have you always like kept a diary and a journal even when you were younger?
I did when I was younger. It kind of faded over time. When I was younger, it was an everyday thing, probably just because I had more time in my schedule for it,
Mhm.
honestly. But now I only really write in a diary when my emotions are running high because writing is still a form of therapy for me.
That's
So
right.
during the pandemic, I didn't keep a journal. This was kind of my journal. Like this was my way of keeping my thoughts in one place.
So you kind of were told like this is going to be something bigger. You were working on this project. How did it go from a draft to publishing?
So I worked on it for a really long time. A lot of these dating experiences actually were written like in the moment, the day of, the day after. So if I had a bad first date, I would run home and I'd write a chapter. Or if an 8 month long fling just went downhill, literally the day of to cope with the heartbreak, I would write about it. So this book actually, it kind of started when I was 16. I wrote a journal entry about my first heartbreak, and that chapter kind of turned into my book. So I wrote my book without even knowing when I was 16.
Wow.
But I had all these stories, I kind of put them all together. And then once it was all done, or I was happy with the finished product, I reached out to my book agent from when I was 8. So it had been like 12 years. I did not want to go through my mom. I wanted to do this all by myself.
Hmm.
My mom didn't read my book until it looked like this, like until it was in this form.
Wow.
So I really wanted to do it all by myself. And I reached out to my book agent and I'm like, hi, remember me? Like, I worked with you when I was 8. She's like, yeah, of course I remember you. And I'm like, okay, well, can I take you out for lunch? I have a pitch for you. And I sold her my book basically. She decided to pitch it to a bunch of different publishers. Post Hill, Simon and Schuster was the one that was most passionate about it and I feel like got the vision the most. So that's
Hmm.
why I ultimately decided to go with them. But it was kind of a crazy process. I was turned down by several male book agents via email because they didn't really get
Hmm.
kind of the feminist aspect of this book.
Totally.
But my female book agent from when I was 8 really saw the vision. She got it and she was passionate about it, just as passionate as I am. So that's kind of how it turns into this.
That's so fab. All right, I need to go back for a second though. So, how open are you about your relationship life with like your mom and your parents, or were they reading some of this stuff for the first time when they read your book?
So I'm an only child. A lot of these experiences they kind of knew. I also wear my emotions on my sleeve. So if I come home from a date and I'm heartbroken, I'll be running through the door crying. I don't really hold it in. So my mom and I are really close. She kind of knew everything. But my dad kind of knew everything too. Like when you're an only child, if you're in a group of 3, like it's really close.
Yeah.
So maybe like a few small details, like the more PG-13 stuff, maybe not. But it is what it is. I think most nervous for my boyfriend to read the book.
Oh
My
God.
parents, my parents fine. Like they kind of knew everything. I feel like with my boyfriend, I was really worried like how he would feel like reading about these romantic experiences, like all my exes. But he was a good sport and he kind of came out of it and said to me like it's really impressive how you're able to convey your emotions in such a, I think he said honest to the bone. That was his wording. Like it's just
All right. He
extremely
sounds like
honest
a
and
good egg,
vulnerable.
actually.
He's a good
I
egg.
mean, I think, my memoir came out when I was 40, so slightly older
Uh-huh.
than you. And there's still stuff in there. And when I'm writing that my parents didn't know about my
Oh my
spent
God.
youth. And it's like really, even as like a grown woman with children now, I'm just like, sometimes I have to be like, oh God, I don't think I ever told my parents this story. And I was on a podcast the other day and I told the story of like getting in trouble for having this guy who was smoking weed in my dorm room my freshman year of college. And my
Oh
parents were
my
like, I never knew that happened. They were
God.
not happy. I'm like, it's okay. I'm a grown woman now. It's all totally fine.
It
But
happens.
it is definitely a thing. Okay, so you mentioned Sex in the City. I know
Yeah.
that is connected to you. That is the inspiration for your name. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or
So
a
I was
Carrie
named
for Carrie.
after Carrie. Yeah. Um,
Have you watched the series?
of course. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, growing up, like I didn't really know what it was. I was also like too young to watch it.
Mhm.
I talk about this in the intro to my book. I actually like went out with Sarah Jessica's son for a bit,
I saw that.
which
That's
is
wild.
crazy. Yeah, and I had no idea like who she was at all. I just knew her as, his mom,
Yeah.
and she was serving me banana juice and just cool mom. And I later learned that it was named after her, and she's a complete icon. So I've really like kind of stepped into the responsibility that is being named after Carrie Bradshaw. I mean, I don't know if you know the skirt on this cover. This is the actual skirt from the set of Sex and the City. This is like
That
the
is
size 00 that she wore.
amazing. Oh my God. But also that's amazing. So, so you watched the series, which was this really like beautiful kind of iconic time capsule of what love was like.
Yeah.
Um, and how do you think that love and dating are different now for your generation?
I mean, we're living in a digital age. I think that's the most obvious reason. We are in the world of dating apps where everyone meets each other online these days. I think at first I was very opposed to that. I just dreamed of running into someone on the street and falling in love. But we meet each other online these days on Hinge, on Tinder, on what else is there? Bumble. So I feel like just leaning into that is important if
Mhm.
you're a Gen Z in this dating world. But at the same time, even though dating online is dangerous sometimes, you never know who you'll meet, you can be catfished. I think Gen Z is smart
Mm.
and we know our worth. We've been through so much, especially over the past few years. We know our worth. So if we see something on a dating app that's fishy, we're able to call bullshit like that.
Yeah.
So that's I think the main
Huge.
difference.
Do you think that men are the same as the men that were portrayed in that series? Do you think they're more evolved now? I like to think hopefully.
No.
No. They're
No.
just the same.
Yeah, I think you find a lot of weirdos out there. As I was writing my book, I was like, these men could fit in the world of Sex in the City. Like some of these experiences, I feel like would happen to Carrie or Miranda or Charlotte or
Mhm.
Samantha. There's like one experience in particular in my book where like I kiss a guy and he's a fly on his tooth. And I was like, that is so specific. Like you can't make that up. Like that's the type of thing that like would fit in Sex in the City world. Like something that is so crazy.
Oh my
Like
God.
it feels like fiction, but it's real. And yeah, it's I don't know. This is literally like I like to say it's the Gen Z Sex in the City because people our age we don't have anything like this. We have Sex in the City, and Sex in the City is fiction or
Yeah.
it's based on Candace Bushnell's life. But I really wanted to kind of fill that void. Like 13-year-olds don't have a Sex in the City. Like this is the Sex in the City for Gen Z.
So this episode is airing alongside a version of the Newlywed Game that I'm playing with my husband. We've been together almost 20 years. We met at 22, so not much older than
Oh,
now.
congratulations.
Thank you very much. And well, actually, I won't spoil how we did in the Newlywed Game because everyone's going to listen to it after this.
Okay.
But, I would love to know what you feel you have learned about love at this stage in your life. If there's one or a couple key takeaways about love, what would they be?
Oh, I love this question. I've learned a lot. I'm only 20, but I've learned a lot. A whole book's worth. So I'd say the number one thing I learned is that it all starts with yourself. It starts from within. I think I was spending so much time chasing guys outwards, relying on people for love to make me feel special when it had to come from within. You hear all the time you can't love others until you love yourself. But I really break down in my book what that means. To
Mm.
me, it ties in very closely to my anxiety journey. When I was at my lowest, that's when I really learned to stand in my truth and to love all parts of myself, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I think the main thing I learned about love is that once you're able to be comfortable in all aspects of yourself, that's when you're able to extend that self love outwards and love others. And eventually, once you're comfortable with a partner, hopefully be able to share that part of yourself with them and feel comfortable talking about those parts of yourself that aren't necessarily pretty. So that's really what I've learned. That's kind of the
Love
conclusion
it. You're
I've come
so
to from the
wise for a 20-year-old. I'm sure you're getting that a lot on this book tour. Before we have to wrap up, I want you to just tell me a little bit about your anti-bullying activism work and kind of why that's been so important to you and what you hope, is that message part of what you want people to take away from the book, especially teenage girls?
Sure. So I worked with No Bully. I started working with them a long time ago. They're a nonprofit teaching kids how to practice empathy from a young age, really going into schools from as early as kindergarten and instilling those tools in children, which is really important. It's not being done enough. So that's an organization I've supported over the years, especially as I've been cyberbullied over social media. It's very important. In the book, I don't talk about being bullied as much. I think in the intro, though, the main thing that I try to get across is, just because I have a following on social media doesn't mean I'm bulletproof. It doesn't mean, my life is perfect. I say in my intro, like, I'm presenting to you the version of me behind those cheesy TikTok voiceovers and product reviews. Like I'm just like you. And that includes bullying. I mean, this is something that teenagers go through when it's hard. So this is, I think the main thing is just showing the real me in this book. Life is not happiness and rainbows all the time, whether it's related to my anxiety or self-love journey or dating. Life isn't perfect, but teenagers need to hear that message because they're not alone.
Carrie, I love that. And I have loved the chance to chat with you. And I'm so excited to see where you go next. You have this like amazing career ahead of you. And I can't wait to read what you do next. So thank you so much for being on Extra Shot today.
Thank you.